Uh, Tumbler Ridge. I mean, this is a really horrible tragedy. There was like what? There was like what, seven?
7 or 8.
7 or 8, like 12-year-olds that were killed and stuff like that. And not to mention the killer's mother was killed. But the thing is though, it's like, I mean, one, I don't know that there's a specific motive or a specific mental health issue. Like, no one's come forward and said the mental health issue was schizophrenia. The mental health issue was BPD or narcissism or something, you know. But everybody is very, very hyper focused on the fact that this was a trans girl. And I have to wonder, like, why. I was watching CTV News, and that, I don't know, the blonde one that wears like the little miniature, what do you call them? Knuckles, metal knuckles. She's a hard-hitting journalist or something. And she comes on and she's like, this killing by a biological male. And I just, I want to, like, one, why is it in every society, you know, from all around the world, including in religious circles, like the Quran and stuff like that, why is it that you, like, ostracize trans girls? The first thing that you're supposed to do is ostracize them. And this happens everywhere, right? And it's like, let's go on the premise, the fact that, let's go on the premise on the idea that this person's a biological male, right? What difference does it make? What is it about a biological male DNA that makes them a mass murderer versus women? You know, what is it about mental illness that is specific to trans people versus cis people? You know, it's like saying that the person who's an alcoholic was molested. All people who are alcoholics are molested. It's just the stereotyping, paint everybody with the exact same brush. And what happens over in the States comes to Canada. And this is a prime example of something that happens in the States. There's a fair amount of transgenders over there going crazy with guns. Why would that be? You know, you have people of different ethnicities. You know, you have all these different stereotypes of like what a mass murder is over there. And why would that be? And it also points out too, like the prevalence of guns in Canada. You know, like why are we allowing people to have more and more guns? And if there's something to do with you know, a biological male XY chromosome that makes them a potential mass murderer, right? Then why do we give guns to men? Why don't we give guns to women? Why do we have male prime ministers? Why do we have male CEOs? You know, I guarantee you in the next election, the Conservatives are probably going to win, and it's going to be a male prime minister, right? Should we allow that? You know, I guarantee you this guy is going to villainize, you know, LGBT people, trans people, the trans women specifically, because we always focus on trans women. This guy's going to use this in his next election, I guarantee you. Right? And probably at the same time, this party is going to push to have more gun licenses issued to men. like who's to say that who's to say that you can't be schizophrenic and have gender identity issues at the same time, and then say that somehow this is related to a person who's has gender identity issues but is not schizophrenic. What is the correlation? This is a classic old cliche that people throw at people like me. But at the same time too is when you take a person who is a minority, in Tumbler Ridge, how many trans people, how many trans girls are there? Right? How many? Maybe 1, 2? Do you think that those people went through some oppression? Through some discrimination that might have driven them absolutely loco? For how long? Growing up in my small town, it's just, everyone called me, they were like, you are a F homosexual. You're a faggot. My name was Faggot Farrell. That was hurled at me endlessly. You transition, you lose family, you lose friends, you lose your job, you lose all this sort of stuff, right? And how are you supposed to deal with that? Right? When you get pushed out of your workplace with PTSD because you've been harassed, you've had numerous human rights violations done to you, you've been bullied endlessly, people have attempted to drive you crazy, and in the process of attempting to drive you crazy, you have like family telling you that you are crazy, and everyone disagrees with you, and you get called faggot walking down the street, and all this sort of things. At what point is the breaking point? At what point does a person go crazy? And if you've got guns around, at one point does someone else say, this is a recipe for disaster?